slowly ramping up for years and years, but making that like the thing. And that's been a seed in the back of my mind. That's been a long way coming this whole time.
Yeah. And so I just want to, two things. One, we definitely need to have a separate conversation on all of the health stuff, right? That part of the journey, but also a separate conversation of the building of the business, because I think a lot of listeners are interested in, especially now, right? A lot of people lost their jobs. They're not interested in going back to a jobby job. And so they may want to create something, but they don't know what. And it seems really scary and overwhelming. And that's something that I'm trying to challenge myself with, is showing a little bit more behind the scenes and what that looks like, because I've been coaching forever. So I have the skill set to do the thing that I'm doing here, right? But I haven't run a business doing it. And so that's very different, the doing the work versus building the business doing the work. So I'd love to have that conversation, because I know, even in the last couple of years, you have contracted with some universities and did remote coaching of their MBA students. And then there were some outplacement companies, but you're like stripping all that away and really like building out Nerdy Girl Career Coach.
Yes. So,
I wore my nerdy glasses just for you today.
I love it. I didn't wear any because the ones that I wear, there's so much glare. You'd never see my beautiful eyes.
Oh, I love your beautiful eyes. We definitely are like sisters from another dimension. Like when we worked together at ASU, people were like, "Are you guys sisters?" Well, Karen used to have blonde hair.
I had blonde hair. So, well, not natural, of course. This is my natural color.
It suits your personality.
Yeah, I think probably I was back to, trying to blend into my environment. I was definitely trying to blend in with Scottsdale a little bit with the blonde.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, we were all trying to fit into it. So
right.
But so back to your comment about the star stories, because this is
let's jump into that.
So when people come to me and they start wanting help with a career coach, a lot of times the first thing they really want is they just want you to be their resume writer. They're like, oh, the one thing that people know to do is get out that blessed Word document and spend all of their time on that poor little sad piece of paper. And the interesting thing is so little about what's going to get you the next gig. And if they had known, like, the thousands and thousands and thousands of people I've seen at this point, getting ready for the next thing in their lives, the resume has a part to play, but it's not the lead starring role.
Right.
And we give far too much time to it. But I think the big thing is, it's just like what we've been talking about this whole time. It's the stories that we can tell. It's like, what is the story of you and how you got here? What is that journey?
So before we get to the STAR method and what that is, where are those places besides the resume that people tell their story? So why is that important? Like the STAR method will help us fine tune and refine the story. Where are those places then that we take that, what we get from that, where do we pepper that throughout the job seeker experience?
Yeah, it's in the profiles that we write about ourselves online. A bio maybe on the company's website, or your LinkedIn profile page, where most people do their networking online for work. But also the conversations we have with people, maybe at once networking events happen again, or the casual conversations you might have waiting for your oil to get changed, or just the way that you might talk in an interview, just the way you professionally story tell. What are those details that you bring out about yourself when you're talking to other people about the work that you do?
Yeah. And that requires work, right? Like you have to know what those little gems and nuggets are in your story, because maybe you end up at dinner at a friend's house and the VP of ABC company is there and you're like, holy shit. Like we always hear about the elevator pitch, but really it's like, it is important to condense it down into a soundbite, because we still live in that sort of world, right? Because initially that's all you get is that little soundbite moment. So say you're at a dinner party and the VP of yada yada is there. Yeah. Once you get past the initial, like, hey, introduction, whatever, what are those little nuggets then that you maybe can share that's going to perk their ears and go, oh, like oh, interesting. We may want a you at our organization.
Yeah, because I don't have 2 hours to tell them about how I started off playing French horn and how I ended up running my own career coaching business.
Right.
Like we've stepped through it. It's a hard story
well,
to tell.
That was an hour. That was right at an hour that we told your story, right? And so then what are those little gems and nuggets?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So people come to me and they ask me, like, Karen, tell me a little bit about what you do. And the thing I can say now is I've really thought and distilled down what it is I'm doing when I'm working with clients, what it is that is kind of like has always been important to me. And it's storytelling. And so I don't talk to them about doing resumes. I don't talk to them about the fact that I'm preparing people for interviews and stuff like that. I tell them, I help people clarify and tell their stories so that their strengths come through, their talents come through, and they can connect with the best possible fit, because I'm passionate about people, that we don't have to be miserable at work, that like there is so much variety in the world of work that there's a place that's a good fit for everybody and a good fit for everyone's talents. So I want people to be happy and love what they do at work, because we have to spend a lot of time doing that stuff.
So let's just share what STAR stands for, and then let's walk through what that might sound like what we might put into that format.
Right. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you're breaking down, like let's say in an interview, somebody says, Karen, can you tell me about a time where you...
the old tell me about a time.
Tell me about a time where you made a mistake. And I can tell them about the time that I accidentally ordered $2,000 worth of tape. And so...
Tell me all about it.
Right. So this is what it looks like. So the situation was that I was working as an admin assistant. I answered the phone call one day from a salesperson who was selling office supplies. Now, we already had a negotiated agreement with a company where we got our office supplies, but he just wouldn't let me go, and I couldn't say no. So I placed what I thought was going to be like a little like $12 order of just some tape and some sticky notes and nothing big. And it's just one, I forget about it promptly. And then it all starts showing up. It's just the boxes start coming in. I'm like, what is this? Why is there a wall of boxes in front of me? And I ask, and I get this invoice, and there it is, like $2,000 worth of tape. I accidentally, instead of getting like I ordered gross of things, gross of things instead of a thing, and it was a deceptive sales practice that they were engaging in. And so, in order to return it, I had to. Then it was going to be like $300 to restock it. So immediately, how I handled it was I took the receipt and I went into the CFO's office, and I was like, "Look, I've made a mistake." I was like, this is what happened. And now we have $2,000 worth of tape. And true to a CFO, he sat there and he did the math to see if it was a good deal on tape. And I that's the best CFO reaction I think I've ever had. But because I actually, I think I might have put my hand on his arm, and I was like, wait a minute. I need to just ground this in the fact that we will never use this much tape.
Holy cow.
And so anyway, so the action I took, so in that situation, so the situation really was the mistake, right? And the one thing I have to say here is that people usually spend too much time on the situation because the setup's already in the question, right? So here's the mistake I make. So I usually keep the story pretty short about I made a mistake and I ordered $2,000 worth of tape. And then the action I took is I went and I communicated. I owned it. I said, this is what I did. I made a mistake. And I sought out help from someone that might have an idea of how we might handle it. And then the outcome. So the result is we were able to pay the couple $100 to restock it and send it back. And I also learned how to say no to salespeople, and you know, we negotiated these contracts for a reason, so we could get the best possible deal. I just kind of stuck with it, you know, like going forward, if something needed to be tried that was different, I would engage the other people that were involved in making the decision the
Procurement.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, you know, and not feel pressured on the fly into doing something that you know wasn't actually really evaluated and studied to make sure it was like, you know, the best practice. So I learned so much about how a business makes decisions, why they make decisions, and you know, going forward it was much easier to be informed of like, no, like, and because I'm not the person that makes the decision and we already have something in place.
Yeah.
You know, it was just very easy and clear, but you know, that was an important early career thing to learn.
Yes. Well, and a super awesome example of a star story, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So you checked two things off the list, right? Like, how to answer, tell me about a time you made a mistake, and then using the STAR method to tell that story. So thank you for the bonus lesson.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I remember coaching a lot of MBA students, and the other piece too, like the result, the R. So there was also like, here's a situation, here was the task at hand, here's the action steps, and really breaking down those steps. So first I did this, then I did this, then I did this. It resulted in increase in sales by this to this percentage, this number, or a decrease in this from this to this, you know, year over year, Q1 to Q2, like whatever that sort of, you know, but the number piece and the showing the results. And that's where people get kind of locked up because we're not taught to keep track of results.
Yeah.
So you really do have to go into the archives, right? Of like, and think about specific examples where you did increase, decrease, you know, how did you add value to that situation? And so I remember that being the piece that was always the hardest. Like people could get the situation, and they could even, sometimes they would get a little lengthy even in the action steps, right? Like, so we would talk to them a lot about, first you did this, then you did this, then you did this, like 3 steps. And then let's spend the bulk of the time talking about that juicy result.
Yeah. The action and result part, I think, is probably, that's
so they can also see how your brain works,
your,
right? When you walk through those steps, then they see how you think, how you process information.
Right.
Yeah.
And they also see, you know, the reason those behavioral questions are even asked is because, you know, your past actions are the best predictor of your future actions. How you handled something in the past is very much a good predictor of how you're going to act in the future. And on top of that, like, so the example I gave was a negative example. So there's one more step past that R. If it is a negative example, if it is a story where you're having to talk about a mistake or a difficulty or something that's a challenge for you or a weakness, the next thing you really want to get to is talk about the lesson you learned. So there's an optional L. It's like star. It's a lesson learned. So if it's that negative thing, and that's what I got to at the end right there in my example, is I started talking about, and that was a very long-winded star story.
Sure.
I have to get it a little more compressed for an actual interview, but that lesson learned of being able to say, in the future, this is what I would do differently, or in the future, this is how I handled those things. Yes. Of really like having them say like, okay, I saw that my obstacles or my failures I see as an opportunity to learn. And a big thing that's important to companies right now is that you have that growth mindset, that you're you're not taking failures and blaming other people and looking other places. You're always taking it as an opportunity to learn and grow. So that being able to give those lessons learned is how you communicate that growth mindset.
And, you know, we know because we talked a lot to the employers, and you still have more recently than I have, right? Like a lot of companies, especially now in lieu of what's just happened with our world this last year, right? Like adaptability, flexibility, not being attached to outcomes, but also not being afraid to fail and fail fast. So we know specifically one company, Amazon, a lot of our students would go to work at Amazon, and they would say, we need people who are open to failing. We don't get new, fresh ideas by people trying to figure out and like, hemming and hawing and not being able to make a decision and just wanting it to be perfect. So I think there's a false narrative around I think that's part of what's on the way higher level, dismantling all the ish in 2020 and old systems and processes that no longer work or serve us, which is back to the storytelling piece and the coaching that you and I did 2 days ago, is how do we make sure we're showing up super authentically? Because when we try